on? Where's your emergency?
On Salkahatchee Road.
Okay, what's the address on Salkahatchee Road?
I'm by the church.
What church? What church are you talking about?
I don't know the name of it with the red roof.
Okay, what in the Salkahatchee Road? Because I don't know what you're talking about.
At the Hampton County side.
Okay, what's going on?
I got a flat tire, and I stopped, and somebody stopped to help me, and when I turned my back, they tried to shoot me.
Oh, okay. Were you shot?
Yes, but I mean, I'm okay.
You shot where? Where were you shot at?
Huh?
Did they actually shoot you or they tried to shoot you?
They shot me, but...
okay, wait, you need EMS?
Well, I mean, yes, I can't drive.
Okay.
And I'm bleeding a lot.
Where part of your body?
I'm not sure. Somewhere on my head.
Your head?
Somewhere on my head. Somebody just stopped for me, ma'am. For 911.
Okay. Still?
Hey.
Okay, let me speak to him, see if he can tell me exactly where you are.
Talking at you, brother. Right here by this church. That church? Okay. Red Roof. Yeah, hurry, please. Okay, about 2 miles on the pedestrian road there.
Okay, and what's your name? I'm still here. I'm still on the line with you. What's your name?
Alex Murdaugh.
Alex Murdaugh?
Yes, ma'am.
And you see you were driving, you got a flat tire, somebody stopped to help you and they shot you?
Well, they pulled over, yes, ma'am, like they were going to help me.
Okay, stay on the line with me. We're going to get some.
I'm bleeding pretty bad.
Okay. Stay on.
St. John's Missionary Church.
St. John's Missionary Church?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And can you give me a description of the person that shot you or shot at you?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, it was a white fella. I'd say
a white male,
a fair amount younger than me. Really, really short hair. You have an ambulance coming there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Stay on the line. I got them on the way.
You think one of y'all can drive me to the hospital? Yes, sir. You want to get the truck though, because I got a baby and he's in the back. One of y'all could get in this car and drive me? Yes, sir. I can. They're going to drive me to the hospital. Ma'am? Ma'am?
I'm still here, sir. They're on the way. Don't hang up.
Oh, welcome to Stillspeakpod. What you just heard, if you haven't figured it out, is the 911 call that was released. The 911 call that Alex Murdaugh very calmly called after the shooting on the side of the road on September 4th. Let's talk about it. Full transparency here. When I first heard this 911 call today, I laughed. I did. It sounds so fake and so ridiculous, and I shouldn't laugh because, I mean, this story is real. These are real people, and there's been many lives that have been destroyed in this story. But I felt a bit of embarrassment for Alex Murdaugh. I wanted to cover my face with a pillow in embarrassment for him. I want to make a few notes about this 911 call. Then we're going to go back in time. And we're going to listen to the 911 call again now that we know so much about this story, when Alex called 911 to report his wife and son being deceased. Now, first, Alex has such a heavy accent. He actually sounds like an old lady to me. That's what he sounds like, an old lady. He definitely does not sound like some big and powerful attorney at all. The second thing is, I noticed right away when the operator answered, Alex is not heavy breathing. He doesn't sound frantic. There doesn't seem to be any type of urgency or panic. There's just nothing. It's just very calm.
Okay, what's the address on Salkehatchie Road?
I'm by the church.
What church? What church are you talking about?
I don't know the name of it with the red roof.
Okay, what end of Salkehatchie Road? Because I don't know what you're talking about.
At the Hampton County side.
So he knows which street he's on, and he says, I'm by the church. And she's like, what church? He's like, oh, I don't know the name of it. But it's got the red roof. Now, if you look at pictures of this church, they have a massive sign outside the front of the building. And if he's looking at the church, you're going to see a red roof, but you're also going to see this big red sign that's out there. And if this was planned in advance, which we know it was, and he either planned this prior with Curtis Edward Smith or called him from that road, then he had to be able to give him a general landmark in order for him to get there and get to the right part of the road, because apparently this is a long stretch of road, because then the operator's like, well, I don't know where you are, and he says that he's on the Hampton County side, which he knew that much. He knew that he was still in Hampton County. He knew the road name, but the church right there, he didn't know the name of. So it's just something to note. Now, if we go back a little ways, when this happened, initially it was being said that the claim was that somebody drove by and shot at him from a car. In this 911 call, he's actually saying that the person stopped to help him and, got out of the car, and when he turned his back. So that's a little bit different. And if you notice, he doesn't come out right away and say, I've been shot, right? If you've been shot, even if it was like a graze across your head, you're going to call 911, right? And typically you would be like, oh my God, I just been shot. I'm on, this road and blah, 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 right? He doesn't say that. He starts off by saying, I'm on, this Salkehatchie Road, which I might have butchered the name of the road. I don't really care. But anyways, so he doesn't start off by saying like, I've been shot. And he goes into what happened. Like, he starts with this person stopping and that they were going to help him, and then he turned his back, okay? So that's actually giving too much of an explanation. That's actually one of the first things they listen for when you're analyzing a 911 call. Like, are you giving too much detail? Because, like, right at that moment, the person needs to know, why are you calling? Is there a car accident? Were you shot? Were you stabbed? And he's giving a backstory before finally saying that he had been shot. And then he says, I turned my back and they tried to shoot me. And even the operator had to get clarification. She's like, did he shoot you or did he try to shoot you? Right? And then he says, no, he shot me. So that's odd, right? Because tried to. Well, I guess technically, yeah, they tried to, right? Because that's a little bit of a slip up there, because we know this is a plan. So then she's like, do you need EMS? And he kind of like hesitates for a moment, but then he says, yeah, he does, because he's bleeding a lot, and he also says, I'm okay, but then he says, I'm bleeding a lot. So which is it? Are you okay or are you bleeding a lot? He doesn't really seem to know. And I have to say this next part because I caught it and I was like, oh my gosh. So in my very first episode of the Murdaugh story, I talked about how the name is said all these different ways, but that Google says it's Murdaugh, and that I heard the family members all say it differently, and that I decided that I was just going to go with Murdaugh because that's how it looks and how it's spelled. And then I think it was like a week or two ago, somebody was like nasty to me and said, they say Murdaugh, period. And I was like, well, I explained that I've heard them say it every different way, and that the way it's spelled and what Google says it is, I'm going with that. And I had some people who backed me up, so thank you for that. I couldn't help but to hear in this 911 call, guess how it's said? Murdaugh. Oh. So I was pleasantly happy to hear that.
Okay, what's going on?
I got a flat tire, and I stopped, and somebody stopped to help me. And when I turned my back, they tried to shoot me.
Oh, okay. Were you shot?
Yes, but I mean, I'm okay.
You shot where? Where were you shot at?
Huh?
Did they actually shoot you or they tried to shoot you?
They shot me, but...
Okay, you need EMS?
Well, I mean, yes, I can't drive.
Okay.
And I'm bleeding a lot.
Where part of your body?
I'm not sure. It's somewhere on my head.
Your head?
Somewhere on my head. Somebody just stopped for me, ma'am. For 911.
Okay. Still?
Hey.
Okay, let me speak to him, see if he can tell me exactly where you are.
Where? Talking at you, brother. Right here by this church. That church? Okay. Red Roof. Yeah, hurry, please. Okay, about 2 miles on the pedestrian road there.
Okay, and what's your name? I'm still here. I'm still on the line with you. What's your name?
Alex Murdaugh.
Alex Murdaugh?
Yes, ma'am.
And you see you were driving, you got a flat tire, somebody stopped to help you and they shot you?
Well, they pulled over, yes, ma'am, like they were going to help me.
Okay, stay on the line with me. We're going to get some.
I'm bleeding pretty bad.
Okay. Still?
St. John's Missionary Church.
St. John's Missionary Church?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And can you give me a description of the person that shot you or shot at you?
So at the beginning of the 911 call, he says that he's okay. Then he says, well, I'm bleeding pretty, a lot. And he says that he's having a hard time seeing. So I guess that explains why he couldn't see the massive sign outside the church, but whatever. And then he says, I'm bleeding pretty bad. So it went from I'm okay to I'm bleeding a lot to I'm bleeding pretty bad. And if you are listening, how calm does he sound? Does he sound the least bit frantic, nervous? I mean, if you were just shot at, wouldn't you be like totally freaking out if you didn't know where the blood was coming from, if it was fatal, if you were dying? I mean, wouldn't you be like heavy breathing and just have this total panic? We know why he's not, right? Because in hindsight, we know this was all a planned fake thing. But this 911 call really confirms that, because you would expect to hear all of that. So it does sound very staged and planned. Now, this next part is fascinating.
It was a white fella. I'd say
a white male,
a fair amount younger than me. Really, really short hair. You have an ambulance coming there?
So this is funny to me and fascinating, because he's like, it's a white fella, he's a fair amount younger than me, and he says the person has really, really short hair. And then he stops with the description and he asks about the ambulance, right? And what you notice is that he doesn't get into details, like what color shirt the person had on, what color their hair is, what color their eyes were. there's nothing about a car, what color the car is, etc. But the description itself, the two things he did say, it's funny, I'm sorry, because he says a fair amount younger than me, which Curtis Edward Smith is definitely not a fair amount younger than him. And he says really, really short hair, which Curtis Edward Smith has a lot of hair. Now, I want to say that when I heard him say a fair amount younger, my brain immediately went to he's trying to point the finger at one of Paul's friends. And the reason why I jumped to that is because he says a fair amount younger. And if he was trying to paint this as a part of what happened to Paul and Maggie, like somebody's trying to kill my entire family and they're seeking revenge, I felt like he said a fair amount younger to point in that direction. That's just my personal opinion. I just thought that was an interesting choice of words. So then he doesn't finish the description, and he's like, you got an ambulance coming? Which she had already said that there was an ambulance coming. And then he actually asked the people who stopped if they can drive him to the hospital, which is really odd because you called 911 for an ambulance, you're on the phone with them, you know that they're on their way. I mean, you're a lawyer, for Pete's sake. You know how a 911 call goes. And, she already said they were coming, and she was just, figuring out where you were. And you go ahead and ask them, to take you to the hospital, which is really odd. And it almost felt like he was wanting to get away from the scene. And not only that, but a couple actually called into 911, and they said that they drove past the man who was on the ground. He had blood all over him, and that he was waving his hands. And then the lady said, he looks fine, but it looks like a setup, so we didn't stop. So this made me wonder if he was actually trying to get passerby cars to stop, to help him, to take him to the hospital for a while prior to calling 911, or what that was all about, to avoid being at the actual scene when they showed up. Just something I thought about. And then he goes on to ask in this 911 call if the people who did finally stop, if they would take him to the hospital, knowing the ambulance was on its way already. But something about the scene was odd to this couple, because they say, or she says, that there was blood all over him. He's on the ground. He's waving his hands. But then she said he looks fine, and it looks like a setup. Now, I know what she meant by that, that this might have been a trap, you stop to help this guy, and then he, robs you or robs your car. I mean, that happens all the time, right? But it's odd that she said that he had blood all over him, and yet she also said he's fine. So this scene must have been really bizarre looking, right? Because how can a bloody guy on the ground look fine? And how does it look like it's a setup? You know what I'm saying? Or maybe she was just being cautious. And I don't know, was this couple psychic? And she literally says, it looks like a setup. And it was a stage setup, thing. So she didn't even know what she was saying at the time, but she ended up being right. Now let's talk about the 911 call that happened after Paul and Maggie's death. And I shared the 911 call on here in one of my very first episodes about the Murdaughs. And I said that initially I felt the 911 call back in June or July, whenever it was released. I can't remember the exact time it was released. I felt at first it did sound genuine. When I listened to it again for my video, I was like, I don't know about that now. I started picking up on things that I didn't pick up when I listened to it originally, which is very common. If you keep listening to something over and over and over again, you pick up something every time you listen to it. So, of course, after I heard this one, I'm like, all right, I need to go back and listen to that one yet again. And sure enough, I picked up a bunch since the last time. I also want to point out real quickly that in both 911 calls, Alex doesn't forget his manners because he says ma'am in both of them. In both scenarios, he's still saying ma'am. Now, that can just be his speech pattern, that it just automatically comes out. But I found that a little bit interesting. I'll pause at certain points to make some little comments like I have been.
Emergency. This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately. My wife.
Well, first of all, that's completely different, right? That's frantic. That's breathing heavy. There's an agony of scream in the background. It's a little echoey, which is really odd. And it's a complete difference from the last one. Last one, he was calm as can be. This one, not so much. Now, that can mean that this is genuine, like he really did find them that way, which anybody would be, oh my God, freaking out. Or it could be he's freaking out because he did something, right? And you would have that reaction like, oh my God, what did I do? And you'd be frantic and freaking out and whatnot. So the difference between these two calls, though, is huge right from pressing play. Now listen closely to what he says, okay? So he identifies himself, he says the address, and then listen. Hold on, sorry.
147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately. My wife and child just got badly.
He said, my wife and son have been shot badly. How did you know they were shot, Alex? Could have been stab wounds. Why did you automatically assume they were bullets? That's the first time I caught that. Some of you may have caught it prior. That's the first time I did, was earlier tonight when I was preparing for this. That's huge. That is tremendous, okay? Because you go up to the body, right? How do you know what it is on first sight without, inspecting them?
147 Moselle Road in Allison. Sir? You said 4147 Moselle Road in Allison? Yes, sir. 4147 Moselle Road. Stay on the line with me, okay? Yes, sir. Stay on the line with me, okay? Hello? I'm still here. Stay on the line. I'm still here, okay? Collison, I have an Alex Murdaugh on the line calling from 4147 Moselle Road. He's advising that his wife and child was shot. Mr. Murdaugh, go ahead and talk to Collison. It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
I've been up to it now, and it's bad. Okay. If you just went up to it now, and you're saying it's bad, why did you just say a few seconds prior that they had been shot badly? Because that implies that you already had been up to it and saw how bad it was, or at least close enough to make the assumption they had been shot. But then he says, I went up to it now and it's bad. And you also hear the manners again in this one. I also find it interesting the dogs are barking since he's the only one there. And, dogs are actually really smart. It could be that, they're barking because Paul and Maggie, their owners, are, laying on the grass and dead. I mean, they are smart. But they shouldn't be barking at Alex because they know Alex, right? So it's kind of interesting the dogs are barking.
Communication. Collison, I have an Alex Murdaugh on the line calling from 4147 Moselle Road. He's advising that his wife and child was shot.
Okay, and sir, give me the address again.
It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay. Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Are they in a vehicle?
No, ma'am. They're on the ground out at my kennel.
Okay, and did you see anyone? Okay, is he breathing at all?
No, nobody.
Is she? Okay, do you see anything? Do you see anyone in the area?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
What color is your house on the outside? What color is your house on the outside?
It's white. You can't see it from the road.
Okay, is it a house or a mobile home?
It's a house.
Sorry. When he says, it's a home! It's hilarious because she says, is it a home or is it, a mobile home or whatever? And he seemed appalled that she asked if it was a mobile home because he's like, it's a home! That's just funny to me, right? Because this is a very wealthy guy. So he's just kind of like, how dare you ask me if it's a mobile home?
And what is your name?
My name is Alex Murdaugh.
Okay, did you hear anything or did you come home and find them?
No, but I've been gone. I just came back.
Okay, and was anyone else supposed to be at your house?
No, ma'am. Please hurry.
We're getting somebody out there to you.
Oh, man. Oh.
Okay, what is her name?
Maggie and Paul.
Maggie is her name?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And please hurry.
We're getting somebody out there to you. Me asking you these questions don't slow them down, okay? And you sure they're not breathing? Is he moving at all, your son? I know you said that she was shot, but what about your son?
Nobody. They're not. Neither one of them's moving.
What is your telephone number? And does anything look out of place?
Ma'am, not particularly, really, no, ma'am.
Okay.
You hear the dinging in the car, like he just opened up the car door, which is fascinating because he says, I just went up to it now. It's bad. It seems like he ends up walking back to his car, probably gets inside. Not really sure why he would have, shut the door and then opened the door, but you hear the dinging, so he had to have.
Okay.
All right, I'm going back down there.
Then you hear the car door shut, and he's like, all right, I'm going back down there. I'm not really sure why he was going back down there. I mean, he said that he went down there, it was bad, and he walked back to his car. Now he's going back down there, but they're on their way. He already said they're not moving and they're not breathing, so why exactly is he going back down there?
close, ma'am?
Yeah, they've been around with you ever since you got on the phone with me. I have multiple people coming out there to you. Okay, can you do me a favor, Mr. Murdaugh, and turn on the flashers on your car so that way they can see where the kennels are?
21. Central phone out station 1A. You will need station 15.
Do you have your flashers on for me, Mr. Murdaugh?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want you to touch them at all, okay? I don't know if you've already touched them, but I don't want you to touch them just in case they can get any kind of evidence, okay?
I already touched them trying to get to see if they were breathing.
Now, he didn't go back down there to check their breathing. He already said they weren't breathing earlier, so I still don't know why he went back down there. And at this point, you hear him come back to the car, and it sounds like he's on speakerphone, or like he put the phone down inside of the car and was yelling into it, and it even sounds almost like he's doing something while answering her, which I would love to know what he was doing, because it seems like he's multitasking.
Okay. Well, I just don't want you to move anything just in case they can get any kind of evidence, okay?
Oh. Ma'am, I'm going to call. I need to call some of my family.
Okay.
On this.
Well, do me a favor for me. Whenever you see the officer or the medics, because they're all coming to you.
Absolutely.
Okay. But we have them come in, turn on the flashes on your vehicle so they can see you, okay? You got the flashes on for me?
I do.
Okay. All right. Whenever you see them.
Okay.
How old is your son?
22.
Okay. All right. We're getting them out there to you, okay?
And I'll answer if you call.
All right.
And then he says, I have to call family. Like, all right, so the cops are on the way to the scene. Your wife and son are most likely dead, maybe not. At this point, you don't really know 100% for sure. You are a lawyer, so you know that when cops show up to a scene that you need to be available to talk to them and give them what happened. This urgency to want to call family immediately, like, I kind of get it because you want somebody to console you. But at the same time, I felt like as soon as he said this, his entire tone changed and he was less frantic. He was less freaking out. There was no agonizing screams that he was doing in the background. So it went very normal. And he still appeared to be yelling into the phone instead of holding the phone, which is just something I'm pointing out. Doesn't really mean much. So anyway, I wanted to go down this again because the new 911 call came out, and so I figured, you know what, well, we're going to go over both of them real quickly because I listened to the original one from June again, and I heard all these different things, and so I wanted to point it out. There are a few minor things that are happening besides the release of this 911 call. It's really nothing too significant, but a lawsuit that was brought by a South Carolina newspaper that they accused the police agency of shielding information from the public in the killings of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh was dismissed this week. The Charleston Post and Courier filed the lawsuit more than a week after the June 7th killings, when Colleton County Sheriff's Office was releasing only 2 lines on incident reports of what happened. And, you know, SLED, the leading investigation agency, denied public records request for the 911 call audio. And the lawsuit said that the sheriff's office and SLED were breaking South Carolina Freedom of Information law by withholding that information, so they had filed a lawsuit. And basically, the lawyer for the Post and Courier said that they voluntarily dismissed the lawsuit in agreement with the agencies because they got what they came for. So that all got settled. There wasn't really a whole lot to that. And last time we talked was when we found out that the Edisto Beach house that they own, it was found that they are back on taxes, or they owe back taxes, I should say, for the last 2 years, and it was about $7,000. Well, apparently, Murdaugh actually co-owns 8 St. Helena Island properties with another man. And the properties are small pieces of land ranging in size from less than an acre to more than 20 acres of the land. And some of the properties are listed as islands with boat access only. And they're situated in the coastal and marshy parts of the county. And apparently, many of these houses, there's been no taxes paid on those either. And it was ranging from a couple of bucks to a couple of $100, where his property, the Edisto property, was a couple of $1,000. So he wasn't paying taxes on several properties. And these 8 properties that he owns with this other person, this person wasn't apparently paying taxes either. So what the heck's going on there? I don't know. More shadiness. And now that we did these 2 911 calls in one video, yeah, there's a significant difference, right? And you can look at that and just, like I said earlier, and say, well, maybe the first one really is genuine because he's really frantic. At the same time, you can also just say, well, if he did something so horrific like that, he could be freaking out because of that. But when you actually listen really closely, and I try not to, really do this, honestly, look too much into something, but when I listen very carefully, it does sound fake. It sounds like fake agonizing screams. Now, God forbid me if they're genuine. I apologize 100% if that ends up being completely genuine. Because, that's horrific, right? Having to walk up on your son and wife deceased. They were both shot multiple times. That's terrible. So, I'd feel really bad if I'm wrong, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Now, that's coming from somebody who, the first time I heard that 911 call, I said that I felt Alex sounded very genuine. That was prior to knowing all that I know now. I knew very, very little at that time. Now I know all this information, so I'm looking at it from a different perspective, right? And I do lean at more towards Alex being involved with the June 7th event. So I had to ask myself, am I hearing that because now my view of Alex has changed, and so I'm being a little biased? I don't know. But I will say, I think it can go either way. Because at first I did think it was genuine, and now I don't. So there is that possibility that it's one or the other, obviously, 50-50. Just like if you were having a kid and you were going to have a boy or a girl. So that's it. No more ramblings for tonight. And until next time, I'll see you soon.